get on that train!
She grabbed the sleeve of a man who didn't even look at her. His bodyguard pushed her away.
Get your filthy hands off him.
Please, listen.
Listen? You stink like garbage. Get out! Call the police!
Someone yelled. Her knees buckled on the marble. $31 in her pocket. Her ailing grandmother waiting in an abandoned car, evicted weeks ago.
I saw something last night on platform 3.
She's crazy. Get her out.
She could have stayed silent, kept her only job, kept her grandmother alive one more week. But she chose them, two strangers who didn't even glance at her once. What Brianna saw would reveal a secret buried for 9 years, connecting her to this billionaire in a way neither could have imagined. 48 hours earlier, Brianna Brooks woke up in the back seat of a 2009 Honda Civic parked behind a Walmart in West Philadelphia. Condensation covered the windows. A wool blanket was tucked around her grandmother Pearl in the passenger seat, reclined as far as it would go. Pearl's hands were shaking. "Nana, you okay?" "Just cold, baby. I'm fine." She wasn't fine. Pearl needed insulin. She'd needed it yesterday. Brianna reached under the driver's seat and pulled out a mason jar filled with crumpled bills and loose change. She counted everything twice. $31.40. Insulin cost $82. "Keep that money for food," Pearl said. "I'll manage." "We'll figure it out, Nana. We always do." Brianna drove to the Mercy Street Free Clinic on the east side. The line wrapped around the building before the doors even opened. Mothers with strollers, old men leaning on canes, a teenager holding a bloody rag over his hand. Brianna signed Pearl in, and they waited. 3 hours in plastic chairs under fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped flies. They were 4 names away when the nurse came out. "We're out of insulin for today. Come back Thursday." Thursday was 2 days away. Pearl's blood sugar had been spiking since Monday. Brianna didn't argue. She helped Pearl back to the car, buckled her in, started the engine. Pearl hummed a hymn, something slow and old, something from a church Brianna remembered as a child. Brianna squeezed her grandmother's hand at a red light and didn't let go until it turned green. That was Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, Brianna was at the Silver Spoon Diner on Broad Street, working the lunch rush. 8 tables, no busboy. The tips came slow, and the customers came fast. A man in a polo shirt snapped his fingers at her from across the room. Didn't use her name, didn't say please, just snapped like she was a dog. "Hey, my coffee's cold." "Yes, sir, I'll get you a fresh one." She smiled through it. She smiled through all of it. 8 hours later, she counted her tips in the back hallway. $6.50. That night, she clocked in at Grand Union Station, her second job, the one that kept the car insured and Pearl's prescriptions half filled. Grand Union at 1 a.m. was a different world. Empty platforms, echoing footsteps, the smell of industrial cleaner and old metal. Brianna knew every tile in this building, every crack in the grout, every flickering light the maintenance crew never fixed. She mopped in silence, headphones in, music low. Her supervisor, Craig Lawson, found her near platform 2. Craig was the kind of man who wore his small authority like a crown. White, mid-40s, beer gut, clipboard always in hand. He'd been station security supervisor for 6 years and acted like he ran the place. "Brooks, you were 2 minutes late tonight." "I was getting my grandmother into the car. She needed help with..." "Not my problem. That's a dock. You know the policy." 2 minutes. Docked pay. Brianna said nothing. Craig leaned in closer. "You're replaceable, Brooks. Remember that." She put her headphones back in, kept mopping. Wednesday morning, Brianna drove to the county assistant's office on her lunch break. She sat in another plastic chair under more fluorescent lights, holding a folder of paperwork she'd already submitted twice. A clerk behind the counter scanned her forms without looking up. "Your grandmother's Medicaid renewal has been denied. There's an error in the documentation." "What error?" "A missing signature on page 6. You'll need to resubmit. Processing takes 6 to 8 weeks. Brianna gripped the edge of the counter. She could be in the hospital by then. She needs insulin every day. What am I supposed to do? The clerk finally looked at her. Not unkindly, but not with urgency either. "I'm sorry, ma'am. That's the process." Brianna walked outside, sat on a metal bench in the parking lot. She didn't cry. She just stared at her hands, calloused, dry, cracked from cleaning chemicals and dishwater. She'd promised her father she would take care of Pearl. She was 17 when he died. A train accident. That's what they told her. Operator error. That's what the report said. She never questioned it. She just buried him and kept going. 9 years of keeping that promise. 9 years of mason jars and free clinics and smiling through snapped fingers. She closed her hands into fists, opened them, closed them again. Then she drove back to the diner for the dinner shift. Wednesday night, 2:37 a.m. Brianna was mopping the corridor near the maintenance bay at the far end of Platform 3. The station was almost empty. Just her, the hum of overhead lights, and the faint rattle of a ventilation shaft that never worked right. She heard something. Metal on metal. Not the usual sound, not the lazy clang of a wrench left on a toolbox. This was deliberate, rhythmic. Someone was working on something they weren't supposed to be working on. Brianna stopped mopping, leaned the handle against the wall, took 3 quiet steps toward the maintenance bay entrance. She pressed herself behind a concrete pillar and looked. 2 men. Neither wore station-issued maintenance uniforms. Theirs were too new, too clean, no name patches. One was crouched under the undercarriage of the Express 615, the morning train to Washington. He held a wrench and was loosening something in the coupling mechanism. The other stood a few feet away, phone pressed to his ear, whispering. Brianna couldn't catch every word, but she caught enough. "Coleman won't make it past Wilmington. Harlan said clean job, no traces. By morning it's done." Her mop handle slipped, hit the metal railing with a sharp clang that echoed through the empty bay. Both men froze. The one on the phone killed the call. The one under the train pulled himself out and stood. They looked toward the sound. Brianna pressed her back flat against the pillar, held her breath. Her heart was beating so loud she was sure they could hear it. 10 seconds. 20. Then footsteps, moving away. A service door opened and shut. Gone. Brianna stood alone in the dark. Her hands were shaking. She didn't fully understand what she'd just seen. But she knew. In the way you know when something is deeply, terribly wrong. Not in your head, but in your chest. She ran. The security office was at the far end of the main concourse. Craig Lawson was leaning back in his chair, scrolling his phone, feet on the desk. "Craig, I need to report something." He didn't look up. "What now, Brooks?" 2 men, in the maintenance bay. They were tampering with the Express 615, the brakes, the coupling. I saw them. Craig finally looked at her, not with concern, with the same expression he always wore when she spoke, like she was wasting his time. "You're a janitor, Brooks, not a detective. I know what I saw. You know what you think you saw. Big difference." He set his phone down and crossed his arms. "Maybe if you spent less time snooping around restricted areas and more time doing your actual job, your section wouldn't look like a dump." "Craig, I'm serious. They mentioned a name, Coleman, and someone called Harlan. They said..." "Listen." He stood up, stepped close. close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. I don't have time for this. And honestly, if you keep this up, I'm calling management. You'll be out of here by sunrise. No warning, no severance. Just gone. The other guard in the room, a younger guy, fresh hire, looked up from his magazine, smirked, said nothing. Your call, Brooks. Craig sat back down, picked up his phone. Conversation over. Brianna stood in the doorway, fists at her sides. She walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. The locker room was empty. Clock on the wall, 3:28 a.m. Brianna sat on the wooden bench, still in her uniform, still shaking. She thought about it, all of it. If she pushed harder, she'd lose this job. No job meant no money. No money meant no insulin for Pearl. No insulin meant Pearl in an emergency room. No insurance meant debt that would bury them both. But those two men, that wrench, the sound of metal being forced where it shouldn't be forced, and that name, Coleman. She pulled out her phone, opened her contacts, scrolled through. Nobody. No one with power. No one who could help. She sat there for a long time. Then she made a decision. She'd come back in the morning. She'd find whoever Coleman was, and she'd warn them herself. Even if nobody listened. Even if it cost her everything. Thursday morning, 5:48 a.m. Grand Union Station woke up like a machine. Lights snapped on, coffee vendors rolled out carts. Commuters poured through the brass doors with briefcases and earbuds and purpose. Brianna hadn't gone home. She'd spent the last 2 hours sitting in her car in the parking structure, watching the station entrance. Pearl was still at the Walmart lot, sleeping in the Civic. Brianna had driven back alone, wearing the same wrinkled cleaning uniform from the night before, eyes raw from no sleep. She didn't have a plan. She just had a name. Coleman. At 5:52, a black SUV pulled up to the station's VIP entrance. 2 private security guards stepped out first, then a man. Walter Coleman, 68 years old, silver hair swept back, a charcoal overcoat that probably cost more than Brianna made in 3 months. He moved through the station like he owned it, because in many ways, he did. Coleman Industries was one of the largest transportation infrastructure firms on the East Coast. Forbes had him at $4.2 billion. Beside him, holding his hand, was a boy, 10 years old, school blazer, backpack too big for his frame. Caleb Coleman, Walter's grandson, his only family since his daughter, Caleb's mother, died of cancer 2 years ago. Staff nodded as they passed. A station manager jogged over to shake Walter's hand. The world bent toward this man. Brianna watched from behind a pillar near the departures board. Platform 3, Express 6:15 to Washington. The same train, the same track. Her stomach dropped. She stepped out, started walking toward them, then walking faster, then running. "Sir!" Walter didn't hear her. The station was loud. He was talking to his security chief. "Sir, wait!" She caught up to them at the platform ramp, reached out, grabbed his sleeve. "Please, don't get on that train." Walter turned, looked down at her hand on his arm, then at her face. Wrinkled uniform, dark circles, cleaning badge still clipped to her chest. His security closed in immediately. "Ma'am, step back." "The brakes! Someone tampered with the brakes last night. I saw them. 2 men in the maintenance bay." "Ma'am, I said step back." One guard put his hand on her shoulder, pushed. Brianna stumbled, caught herself on one knee, and then Craig Lawson appeared. He'd been working the overnight overlap, saw the commotion, walked over with his clipboard and his small, satisfied smile. "I know this woman," he said to Walter's security. "She's a cleaner. Already reported her for erratic behavior last night." He looked down at Brianna. "I warned you, Brooks." Craig grabbed her by the collar of her uniform and pulled her to her feet, not gently. "You're fired. Grab your mop and get out." A crowd gathered. Phones came out. Every single one pointed at Brianna. A woman in a designer coat held up her phone, recording. "Look at this. A homeless woman harassing passengers." She laughed. The person next to her laughed too. A man in a suit yelled across the concourse, "Someone call the police!" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. These people always cause problems. Probably on something. Just get her out of here. Not one person stepped forward. Brianna was on her knees, surrounded, filmed, mocked. Her collar still twisted from where Craig had grabbed it. She looked past all of them, past the phones, past the laughter, straight at Walter Coleman. "That train is not safe. I saw them break it. Please." Silence. Just for a second. Then a small voice. Quiet. Almost lost in the noise. "Grandpa, she's crying." Caleb, standing beside his grandfather, looking at Brianna with wide, serious eyes. Walter looked down at his grandson, then back at the woman on the floor. Something shifted. Walter Coleman raised one hand, palm flat. No words. Everyone stopped. Security froze mid-step. Craig's mouth opened, then closed. Even the crowd seemed to hold its breath. That's what $4.2 billion buys you. Not just money. Gravity. Walter looked at his grandson. Caleb was staring at Brianna, not with fear, with something closer to recognition, like he understood what it meant to be small and unheard. Walter knelt down, a billionaire in a $4,000 coat, on one knee, on the public floor of Grand Union Station, eye level with a cleaning woman who'd just been dragged across the same floor. "What's your name?" "Brianna. Brianna Brooks." "What exactly did you see, Brianna?" She told him, quickly. No drama, no pleading, just facts. 2 men, 2:40 a.m., maintenance bay, platform 3. Fake uniforms, too clean, no name patches. One under the Express 615 with a wrench on the coupling mechanism, the other on the phone. "I heard them say a name," she said. "Coleman. They said Coleman won't make it past Wilmington. And another name, Harlan. Harlan said clean job." Walter's face didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. A flicker, quick and cold, like a door locking. "Harlan," he repeated, quietly, to himself. He stood, turned to his security chief, a broad-shouldered man named Reynolds. "We're not boarding. Pull the transit authority on the line. Now." Craig stepped forward. "Sir, I already dealt with this. She's a janitor. She doesn't know what she's—" Walter turned, looked at Craig the way you look at a fly on your food. "I wasn't talking to you." Craig's mouth shut. His face went red. He stepped back and didn't speak again. Reynolds made the call. Walter's private security team fanned out across the platform. Brianna sat on the floor where she'd fallen. Nobody helped her up. Nobody offered a hand. The crowd still watched, phones still out, but quieter now, confused. 6:15 a.m. The express pulled out of the station, right on schedule. Brianna watched it go. Her chest was tight. Walter stood by the departures board. Caleb sat on a bench nearby, swinging his legs, reading a book. Unaware. 10 years old and unaware of how close he'd just come to something unthinkable. 6:22, Walter checked his watch. 6:35. Reynolds was on the phone with transit dispatch. 6:48. Brianna was still on the floor, still watching the board. 6:51. Every screen in Grand Union Station turned red. Breaking. Express 615 to Washington derails outside Wilmington. Brake system failure. Multiple cars off the tracks. Emergency services dispatched. The station went silent. For exactly 3 seconds, not a single person moved. Then chaos. People running to the screens, shouting, calling loved ones. A woman near Platform 1 collapsed into her husband's arms. The ticket counter was swarmed. Walter stood perfectly still. His phone buzzed. He didn't answer. He stared at the screen. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then he turned. Brianna was sitting on a bench near the security office, hands behind her back, handcuffs on. Craig had called the station police 20 minutes earlier, before the news broke, before the world changed. She sat with her eyes closed, tears running down her face. Not from sadness, from relief. Walter walked toward her. Reynolds followed. The crowd that had mocked her parted like water. He stopped in front of the station officer standing guard. "Take those off." The officer hesitated. "Sir, she was detained for—" "I said take them off, now." The cuffs came off. Brianna rubbed her wrists. Red marks. She didn't look up right away. Walter crouched in front of her. Same level, same position as before. "Brianna Brooks." She opened her eyes. "You just saved my grandson's life." She exhaled, long and shaking, like she'd been holding her breath since 2:40 a.m. Within the hour, everything moved fast. Police pulled Brianna into an interview room. She described the two men: height, build, the wrench, the phone conversation, the service exit they used. She described it all with the precision of someone who'd spent 9 years learning to notice things other people ignored. Security footage was pulled. The maintenance bay camera had been wiped. Someone had gotten to it. But a backup server in the station's old IT closet still had 11 seconds of footage from a secondary angle. 2 figures. The undercarriage of the Express 615. Timestamp 2:41 a.m. 11 seconds. Grainy. Partial. But real. Walter made phone calls from a private office on the station's upper level. His voice was ice. Not grateful. Not yet. He was furious. Someone had tried to kill him and his grandson, and the name sitting in his chest like a shard of glass was the name of a man he'd trusted for 22 years. Harlan. Meanwhile, Craig Lawson stood in the main concourse, watching the aftermath on the screens. He understood now. The woman he'd mocked, threatened, and fired had been telling the truth, and he'd silenced her. He walked up to Reynolds, tried to get ahead of it. "Look, I was going to investigate. I just needed to verify her story before—" Reynolds didn't let him finish. "Mr. Coleman has your name. I'd suggest you find a lawyer." Craig's face went white. Whiter than the station tiles Brianna had mopped 6 hours ago. Across the building, Brianna was led to a private lounge. First-class waiting area. Leather chairs, bottled water, a window overlooking the tracks. She'd never been in a room like this. She'd cleaned rooms like this. A woman from Walter's staff brought her coffee, set it on the table with a napkin. "Can I get you anything else, Ms. Brooks?" Ms. Brooks. Nobody had ever called her that. "I need to call my grandmother. She doesn't know where I am." They gave her a phone. She dialed Pearl. "Nana, it's me. Some people are going to come help you. Don't be scared. It's okay. I promise." Pearl's voice, thin and worried. "Baby, what did you do?" Brianna closed her eyes, leaned her head against the leather chair. Something Daddy would have done. She hung up, held the coffee with both hands, warm. The first warm thing she'd felt in days that wasn't the heat coming through a car dashboard vent. She sat there, quiet, safe. For now. By that evening, Pearl Brooks was sleeping in a real bed for the first time in weeks. Walter's staff had arranged a hotel room. Nothing fancy, a Holiday Inn near the station. But it had clean sheets, hot water, and a thermostat Pearl could control. A courier delivered insulin, test strips, and a blood pressure monitor within the hour. Paid in full. No paperwork. No 6 to 8 week wait. Pearl sat on the edge of the bed and ran her hand across the comforter like it was something precious. Baby, who are these people? Someone I helped, Nana. That's all. Pearl looked at her granddaughter for a long time, then nodded. She lay down, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and closed her eyes. Within 5 minutes, she was asleep. Brianna sat on the other bed, watched Pearl breathe. Slow, steady, safe. She pulled the blanket up higher around Pearl's shoulders, tucked the edges the way her father used to, tight on the left side, loose on the right, so she could turn in her sleep. A small thing, a thing nobody else would ever notice. That evening, Walter invited Brianna to his company's Philadelphia office. Not a restaurant, not a fancy dinner. A conference room with takeout containers and paper napkins. They sat across from each other. Walter ate slowly. Brianna barely touched her food. Most people would have walked away, Walter said, especially after what that security guard did to you. Most people didn't hear what I heard. That's not what I mean. Walter set his fork down. You had every reason to protect yourself. You chose not to. Why? Brianna didn't answer right away. She turned her coffee cup in her hands. Because I'd want someone to do it for me. Walter studied her. Tell me about your father. Brianna's hands stopped. How do you know about my father? I don't. But you talked about that train like someone who grew up around rail. And there's something in the way you looked at those tracks. A long pause. He worked the rails. He died on them. 9 years ago. Walter's eyes changed. Not pity, recognition. I'm sorry. Don't be, Brianna said. Just don't waste what I gave you. Douglas Harlan found out about Brianna Brooks at 9:14 a.m. on Thursday. He was sitting in his corner office on the 32nd floor of Coleman Industries' New York headquarters when Reynolds' preliminary report landed on the internal server. Harlan had access to everything. He'd been co-founder for 22 years. Nobody had thought to lock him out. Not yet. He read the report twice, then closed his laptop, poured himself a glass of water, drank it slowly. Douglas Harlan was 62 years old. Silver temples, custom suits, a handshake that made people feel important, and a smile that made them forget he was counting their weaknesses. He'd built Coleman Industries alongside Walter from the ground up, rail logistics, infrastructure contracts, government partnerships. But somewhere around year 10, Douglas stopped building and started taking, skimming contracts, bribing safety inspectors, cutting corners on maintenance schedules to inflate quarterly margins. Walter never knew. Walter was the visionary. Douglas was the machine. And now a 26-year-old cleaning woman with no money and no connections was threatening to dismantle everything. Harlan didn't panic. He strategized. His first call was to a contact at a Philadelphia news station. Within 2 hours, a segment aired during the noon broadcast. Troubled homeless woman claims she predicted train disaster. The chyron ran under a blurry still of Brianna being restrained at the station, pulled from Sandra Whitfield's video. The segment cited sources close to the investigation, claiming Brianna had a history of erratic behavior. They mentioned her eviction. They referenced an old emergency room visit, exhaustion from working double shifts, reframed as a psychiatric episode. None of it was true. But it didn't need to be true. It just needed to be first. By 3 p.m., the story was everywhere. Sandra Whitfield's original video, the one where she laughed while Brianna was dragged across the station floor, was re-edited with new captions. Deranged woman attacks billionaire at Grand Union Station. It had 200,000 views by dinner. The comments came fast. She probably planned the whole thing. Classic scam artist, looking for a payday. Why is Coleman protecting this woman? Bet she was in on it. Brianna saw the coverage on the hotel room television. Pearl was asleep in the next bed. The volume was low, but the words were loud enough. She picked up her phone, opened the comments under the video, read them one by one. Every insult, every assumption, every stranger who'd decided she was guilty based on a 30-second clip and a headline. Her face didn't change. She'd been invisible her whole life. Now she was visible, and it was worse. She called Walter's office. The line rang 4 times and went to voicemail. She was alone again. For a moment, she thought about leaving, packing Pearl into the car and driving south, disappearing, going back to being no one. It was safer that way. Invisible people don't get destroyed on the internet. Then she looked at her phone wallpaper. A photo of her father in his railroad uniform, smiling in front of a locomotive. James Brooks, the man who told her, if you see something wrong, you say something. She put the phone down, stayed in the chair, stayed in the fight. Friday morning, Harlan's lawyers moved. A formal defamation lawsuit was filed against Brianna Brooks, alleging she fabricated the sabotage story for financial gain and public attention. The filing was 6 pages long and cited no credible evidence of tampering based on the official Transit Authority preliminary report. That report had been written by Gregory Nolan, a senior transit safety official who had received quarterly payments from a shell company controlled by Harlan for the past 12 years. But nobody knew that yet. A cease and desist letter was delivered to Brianna's hotel room by courier. She opened it at the small desk by the window, read it slowly. Words like defamatory, malicious intent, civil damages, words designed to make an ordinary person fold. She put it down, stared out the window at the train tracks below. That same morning, Craig Lawson appeared on a local news segment, seated in a studio chair, calm, rehearsed. I dealt with her that night, he told the anchor. She was agitated, irrational. I tried to handle it professionally, but she was completely out of control. I had no choice but to report her. He didn't mention that he'd grabbed her collar, didn't mention that he'd laughed, didn't mention that he'd threatened to fire her for reporting a safety concern. The anchor nodded. And you had no indication the train was compromised? None whatsoever. I followed protocol. The narrative was set. Brianna was the problem. The system had worked. Nothing to see here. By Friday afternoon, Walter's board of directors called an emergency session. The boardroom was long and polished, 12 seats, Walter at the head. 3 board members had direct financial ties to Harlan, though they'd never disclosed them. Victor Sloan, the most senior independent member, spoke first. Walter, this woman is a liability. She's all over the news. The lawsuit is public. If we don't distance ourselves now, this drags the entire company into a media circus. Another member. The transit report says no sabotage. Maybe she was confused. Maybe she saw maintenance workers doing their jobs. A third. Sentiment isn't strategy. We need to protect shareholder value. Walter sat through all of it, arms crossed, face unreadable. Then he spoke. The transit report was written by a man Douglas has been paying under the table for 12 years. Brianna Brooks has no reason to lie. She has every reason in the world to stay silent. And she didn't. He paused. I'm not distancing myself from her. If anything, this board should be asking why a cleaning woman had more courage than everyone in this room combined. Silence. Sloan shifted in his chair, but didn't respond. After the meeting, Walter drove to the hotel. Brianna was packing. Where are you going? Home. Except I don't have one. You're not going anywhere. I gave you my word. Brianna stopped, turned to face him. Your word? Mr. Coleman, I'm on the news being called a liar. Your lawyers haven't returned my calls. The police aren't investigating. Nobody's investigating. Your word doesn't pay for a lawyer. Walter looked at her. Steady. Then I'll get you one. He meant it. But they both knew. Right now, Douglas Harlan was winning. Eileen Porter didn't look like a fighter. 5'4", reading glasses on a chain, cardigan over a blouse. She looked like someone's favorite librarian. She was, in fact, the most feared whistleblower attorney on the East Coast. Walter brought her in on Saturday morning. She met Brianna in the hotel conference room. No small talk, no sympathy face. She opened a legal pad and uncapped a pen. Tell me everything. Start from the mop, Brianna told her. All of it. The maintenance bay, the 2 men, Craig, the station, the handcuffs, the news coverage, the lawsuit. Eileen listened without interrupting, wrote 3 pages of notes, then set her pen down. Here's where we are. Harlan's team has buried the transit report, spun the media narrative, and filed a defamation suit designed to scare you into silence. It's a classic playbook, expensive, effective, and it works on 99% of people. And the 1%? The 1% has me. Eileen laid out the plan. The sabotage didn't erase itself. Somewhere in the system, there was evidence, tool marks, maintenance logs, camera footage, financial records. Harlan's people were fast, but digital footprints don't disappear as easily as people think. They just had to find the right ones before the cleanup was finished. Walter authorized full resources, Reynolds and his security team, Eileen's private investigator, a former FBI forensic accountant named Greta Sullivan. No budget limit, no time limit. The search started Saturday afternoon. By Sunday, Greta found the first thread. Harlan's personal finances were clean. Too clean. 12 bank accounts, all spotless. But buried 3 layers deep in Coleman Industries' corporate structure was a shell company called Ridgeline Consulting. It had no employees, no office, and no clients. What it did have was a series of wire transfers. 2 large payments made 5 days before the derailment to accounts belonging to 2 men with prior convictions for industrial sabotage. The same 2 men Brianna described. Reynolds tracked the maintenance logs next. The official logs for Platform 3 showed routine inspection completed at 11 p.m. Wednesday, 5 hours before Brianna witnessed the tampering. But the station's original server backups told a different story. The log had been edited at 4:15 a.m. Thursday. Someone had gone into the system after the sabotage and rewritten the record to make everything look normal. Clumsy, rushed, and traceable. Then the camera footage. The primary security camera in the maintenance bay had been wiped. Harlan's people had gotten to it within hours. But Grand Union Station was an old building with an old IT system. A secondary backup server, tucked in a utility closet behind the HR office, still held 11 seconds of footage from an auxiliary angle. 2 figures, the undercarriage of the Express 615, a wrench catching the light. Timestamp, 2:41 a.m. 11 seconds. Grainy, Partial, but undeniable. Eileen reviewed the evidence Sunday night, spread the printouts across the conference table. Financial records on the left, maintenance logs in the center, camera stills on the right. Then she made a request that changed everything. Pull every rail incident report involving Coleman Industries infrastructure for the past 15 years. Not just this line, all of them. Greta ran the search. 63 incidents across 12 states. Most were routine, weather damage, signal failures, minor delays. But one report stopped her cold. A fatal derailment on the Northeast Corridor line, 9 years ago. One casualty, the train's engineer. Cause listed as operator error. Case closed in 6 weeks. No further investigation. No appeal from the family. The engineer's name was James Brooks. Eileen stared at the file, then checked the investigating officer's name at the bottom of the report. Gregory Nolan. The same senior transit official currently receiving quarterly payments from Ridgeline Consulting, Harlan Shell Company. The same man who'd just written the preliminary report calling the Express 615 derailment a mechanical failure. She brought the file to Walter. He read it standing by the window. Didn't sit down. Didn't speak for a full minute. James Brooks, her father. Yes. Douglas killed a man 9 years ago, covered it up, blamed the victim, and I never knew. Walter set the file on the desk, placed both hands flat on the surface, leaned forward like the weight of 22 years of misplaced trust was pressing down on his shoulders. She saved my grandson's life, and she doesn't even know that the man who tried to kill us is the same man who killed her father. He picked up the phone, dialed Brianna's room. I need to see you. Tonight. And I need you to sit down, Walter told Brianna on Sunday night. They sat in the hotel conference room, just the two of them, a single file folder on the table between them. Your father's death was not an accident. Brianna didn't move, didn't blink. The investigation was handled by a transit official named Gregory Nolan, the same man who's been taking money from Douglas Harlan for over a decade. The same man who just wrote the report calling the Express 615 derailment mechanical failure. Brianna looked at the file, didn't touch it. Your father didn't make an error. The equipment failed because someone cut the same corners Douglas has been cutting for years. And when your father died, they covered it up, blamed him, closed the case in 6 weeks. Silence. Brianna's hands were flat on the table, perfectly still. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were dry. 9 years, she said. Quiet, almost to herself. I carried that. I told myself my daddy made a mistake and it killed him. I carried that for 9 years. I know. No, you don't. She looked at him, not with anger, with something heavier. Every time someone at the diner snapped their fingers at me, I told myself, keep going. Daddy made a mistake, but you don't have to. Every time Craig called me replaceable, I told myself, just work harder. Daddy messed up, but you can do better. She pressed her palms into the table. He didn't mess up. They killed him, and they made me believe it was his fault. Walter said nothing. There was nothing to say. After a long moment, Brianna spoke again. What happens now? That's up to you. I can take care of you and your grandmother regardless. Settlement, medical care, housing. And Harlan, if you want to go public, we go public. Full evidence, press conference, FBI referral. But it will be loud. It will be ugly. Douglas won't go quietly. Brianna opened the file, saw her father's name printed on the incident report, saw the words operator error in bold type. He died and they called it his fault? For 9 years, everyone who knew my father thought he made a mistake that killed him. She closed the file. I want his name back. Walter nodded. Then we go public. Together. You're going to expose your own partner? He stopped being my partner the night he tried to kill my grandson. Monday morning, 10 a.m. Coleman Industries headquarters. Walter had called a full emergency board meeting, all 12 members present, legal counsel on standby. Outside the building, a row of news vans. Walter's office had issued a press advisory. Major announcement regarding the Express 615 incident. Douglas Harlan walked in at 9:58. Gray suit, burgundy tie. He poured himself a coffee and sat down 3 seats from Walter. Calm, confident. He believed Brianna Brooks had already been neutralized. Walter stood at 10:01. He nodded to Reynolds, who dimmed the lights and activated the screen. First slide. Ridgeline Consulting. Wire transfers. 2 payments to 2 men with industrial sabotage convictions. 5 days before the derailment. This shell company is controlled by Douglas Harlan. These payments went to the 2 men who tampered with the Express 615. Harlan's coffee cup paused halfway to his mouth. Second slide. Maintenance logs. Side by side, the altered version and the original backup. Edit timestamp, 4:15 a.m. Thursday, after the sabotage. Third slide. 11 seconds of security footage. 2 figures. The undercarriage. The wrench. 2:41 a.m. The room was dead silent. Victor Sloan leaned forward. 2 board members exchanged glances. Harlan set his coffee down. Slowly. His expression hadn't cracked. Not yet. Walter, this is absurd. You're presenting circumstantial. I'm not finished. Fourth slide. James Brooks, railroad engineer. Fatal derailment 9 years ago. Official cause, operator error. Investigating officer, Gregory Nolan. Same man, same shell company payments, same pattern. James Brooks was Brianna Brooks's father. He looked directly at Harlan. The woman you tried to destroy on television. The woman your lawyers sued for defamation. The woman who was dragged across a station floor for trying to save lives. Her father was your first victim, Douglas. Harlan's mask broke. His right hand trembled. He pulled it off the table and put it in his lap. This is a setup, he said, his voice thinner than 30 seconds ago. This woman is manipulating you, Walter. Her name is Brianna Brooks. You killed her father. Then you tried to kill me. Walter turned to the board. I am filing for Douglas Harlan's immediate removal as co-founder and board member. All evidence has been referred to the FBI, the Department of Transportation, and the Philadelphia District Attorney. Silence. Then Sloan spoke. I move to approve. Unanimous. Harlan stood, buttoned his jacket, tried to walk out. Reynolds stepped aside, not to block him, but to reveal 2 federal agents standing in the lobby. They'd been there since 9:45. That afternoon, Walter held a press conference. Brianna stood beside him. Not behind him, beside him. This is Brianna Brooks. 4 days ago, she saved my life and my grandson's life. She did it knowing she would be fired. She did it knowing no one would believe her. She did it after being mocked, humiliated, and physically restrained for trying to tell the truth. He paused. Her father, James Brooks, was a railroad engineer who died 9 years ago. His death was not an accident. It was covered up by the same man who tried to kill me. Brianna didn't know that when she stopped me at the station. She just knew something was wrong, and she refused to stay quiet. He looked directly into the cameras. Kindness doesn't ask permission. It just shows up. Brianna stepped forward. Her hands shook. Her voice was low. My dad taught me one thing. If you see something wrong, you say something. Even if nobody listens. Even if it costs you everything. She steadied herself. He lived that way. He died because of people who don't live that way. I didn't want anyone else's family to go through what mine went through. She stepped back. Walter put a hand on her shoulder. The cameras flashed. By Monday evening, Douglas Harlan was in federal custody. Charges: conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, obstruction of justice, and involuntary manslaughter in the death of James Brooks. Craig Lawson was terminated and charged with obstruction for suppressing Brianna's safety report. Gregory Nolan was arrested at his home in New Jersey. Sandra Whitfield deleted every social media account she had after being identified in the press conference footage. Her employer released a statement distancing themselves. The video of Brianna being dragged across Grand Union Station was watched 14 million times in 24 hours. But now the comments were different. This woman is a hero. I'm ashamed I would have walked past her. Protect Brianna Brooks at all costs. The world finally caught up. 3 months later, Brianna carried the last box through the front door of a 2-bedroom apartment in West Philadelphia. Nothing fancy, a walk-up on a tree-lined street with a fire escape and a window that faced east. Morning light, the kind of light Brianna hadn't woken up to in over a year. Pearl sat in a new armchair by the window. Not new, second-hand, from a thrift store Brianna found on Walnut Street. But clean, comfortable. Hers. On the side table, insulin, test strips, blood pressure medication. All covered. Full insurance through a plan Walter's team had set up. Monthly checkups at a real clinic, not a free one with a 3-hour line and a nurse who ran out of supplies by noon. Pearl ran her hand along the armrest, looked around the room, smiled. Your daddy's smiling somewhere right now, baby. Brianna set the box down, pulled a framed photograph from inside. James Brooks, in his railroad uniform, standing in front of a locomotive, grinning like he'd just won something. She placed it on the mantel, stepped back, looked at it. Yeah, she said. I think he is. 2 weeks after that, Walter held the launch event for the James Brooks Rail Safety Foundation. The foundation funded 3 things: whistleblower protection programs for transit workers, independent safety audits for rail infrastructure, and scholarships for children of railroad employees. It was headquartered in Philadelphia, and its community director was Brianna Brooks. Not a token title, a real job, a desk with her name on it, a team of 4, a direct line to Walter's office. At the launch, Walter stood at the podium in front of 200 people, transit workers, journalists, city officials, Coleman Industries staff. I've built companies. I've closed deals worth billions. But the bravest thing I've ever witnessed was a 26-year-old woman with nothing to gain and everything to lose, standing in a train station at 6 in the morning, telling the truth to a man who almost didn't listen. He looked at Brianna in the front row. I almost didn't listen. I want to sit with that. Because most of us walk past. Most of us look away. She didn't. Applause. Brianna didn't cry this time. She sat tall, hands in her lap. Still. A week later, Caleb visited the foundation office. He brought a book, his favorite, about trains. My grandpa says, you're the reason I'm still here. Brianna knelt down to his level, eye to eye, the same way Walter had knelt to hers on the station floor. You know what? You're the reason your grandpa listened. You said I was crying, and he stopped. Caleb thought about that. So we saved each other? Brianna smiled. Yeah, I think we did. Douglas Harlan was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Conspiracy, fraud, obstruction, involuntary manslaughter in the death of James Brooks. Craig Lawson was barred from security work in Pennsylvania. Gregory Nolan pleaded guilty to 12 counts of filing false safety reports. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania passed the James Brooks Transit Safety Act, requiring independent safety audits on all public rail infrastructure and whistleblower protections for transit employees at every level. Pearl Brooks volunteers at a community center on Tuesdays. She teaches knitting to teenagers who remind her of Brianna. She's healthy. Walter calls Brianna every Sunday. Caleb sends her book recommendations. And Brianna walks through Grand Union Station each morning on her way to work. She passes the spot where she fell to her knees. She doesn't stop. But sometimes she touches the railing, just for a second, and keeps walking. What would you have done in Brianna's place? Drop it in the comments.
One thing about this story I will never forget. Doing the right thing is easy when it's free, when it costs you nothing, when everybody claps and say, "Good job." That's not courage. That's being nice when convenient. Real courage is when doing the right thing might cost you everything. Your job, your safety, the last dollar, and you do it anyway. Not because it would be rewarded, not because anyone would thank you, but because you couldn't live with yourself if you didn't. Most people stay quiet. Most people look the other way. Most people protect themselves first. And I'm not joking. It's hard. It's scary. The world doesn't make it easy to speak up. But every now and then, someone decided the truth matters more than the comfort, more than the safety, more than the keeping their head down. And that one person, that one voice nobody wanted to hear, changes everything. Saves lives, exposes lies, fixes what's been broken for years. So, if you ever see something wrong, say something. Even if they laughed, even if they fire you, even if nobody will listen to you, say it anyway. Because the truth doesn't need to be popular. It doesn't need one person brave enough to say it out loud. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice every week. And remember, courage isn't loud. It's a quiet person who refuses to stay silent when it matters most.